The sort of general theme of this relates around Newsstand. 140 days ago, Apple basically tried to do for periodical publishers what iBooks had done for book publishers and give it its own space in what was becoming a crowded app market. Pre-Newsstand publications sat in their own app folders. Post-Newsstand, they now download to a dedicated bookshelf. And Newsstand also helps readers by delivering new issues automatically, downloading titles you've subscribed to in the background. Is it a big leap forwards, and what are the alternatives? Well, here to tell us are two publishers who are at the forefront of pioneering app editions, and one person who might fear the invention to rival her own services. Carol Jordison is the UK manager for Zinio, the online magazine distributor. Mike Goldsmith is editor-in-chief of iPad and tablet editions for Future Publishing, and headed up a team that published 65 titles on Apple's Newsstand for day one of its launch. But Alex Wilson, who's head of app development for Dennis Publications, is going to set the scene going. I'm Graham Duffield from Digital Publishing Company. I'll be chairing this session, and we'll be looking forward to lots of questions from all of you after the speakers have finished. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Smooth. So as you can see, we've changed the running order, which means I'm going to give everyone else's presentations. Okay, I think that's working. So yes, hello, my name's Alex Watson. I work at Dennis Publishing. We're one of the UK's largest independent magazine publishers, and we publish content for a range of different sectors, so cars, Auto Express, and Evo, that kind of thing, technology, Computer Shopper, PC Pro, fitness, men's fitness we do, women's fitness, and we also publish The Week. So we are publishing for specialist audiences a lot of the time, but with a kind of an eye on what happens generally. We're a B2C publisher, so we're very interested in both advertiser revenues and reader revenues. And Newsstand's been a really big deal for us, so I'm just going to talk about how that's affected what we do with publishing for phones and tablets. So the App Store. It's something to bear in mind throughout the whole of this conversation is the App Store is a retail environment. So as opposed to when you're publishing digitally pre the App Store, when you're publishing with a kind of an eye on Google and SEO, the App Store functions in a very sort of different way. It's much more similar to a traditional retail environment, much more like a shop on the high street. So placement and visibility are crucial. And prior to Newsstand, the way that apps were sold is all apps were sold through the same channel. So you would be up against eBay, Facebook, Angry Birds, whatever. When a consumer went to the App Store, everything, all the different categories were presented as one. So this is kind of what the App Store looks like now. So you can see that Apple are using charts, they're using features. The search box actually appears in the top right. It's much more minimized than on the web. So with a website where most of your traffic is going to be coming from search, that's completely different inside the App Store. So it needs to be understood, as that kind of transaction with a customer. And despite the fact that everything was kind of sold, you were kind of going up against much bigger apps and non-media apps, it worked fairly well. I mean, we were publishing pretty early onto the App Store with the iPad. We launched iGizmo in 2010, and you could still record a decent number of downloads. This is actually from the week that we launched iGizmo, which I think is sort of autumn 2010, and you can see in the charts that there's quite a few media apps on the free chart, which is the one on the right. So you've got the Evening Standard there. You got the Telegraph, and obviously I'm plugging my own company, so there we are at the top. And we did 80,000 downloads in the first month or so. So it's it's successful. Everyone internally was very happy. We thought this is great. We've got 80,000 people who've actively made a choice, downloaded iGizmo, they're reading our stuff, they're going to be seeing adverts. Terrific. I think it's fair to say Newsstand completely redefined doing well. You'll hear this from any publisher who's engaged with it. If anyone would like to guess when Newsstand launched, this is a graph from our stats program that shows number of downloads. There are no prizes for getting this right. You know, the graph, you're doing that many downloads that it appears to look flat beforehand. You know, so stuff like iGizmo, which was doing a fairly reasonable number of downloads, it's rendered, you know, the scale is absolutely just totally different. So you can see on kind of day one, we were doing 250,000 downloads or something like that in, you know, when it launched. It's unheard of, really. So in total, these figures are slightly out of date because I gave this presentation a little bit earlier in the month. So we've done 3.9 million app downloads since the launch of Newsstand. Newsstand launched October the 12th, I think, last year. So, you know, that's something that we're, you know, incredibly happy with. There's an awful lot of interest from users with iPads and iPhones who are actively going out and who want to see content from media companies. People with touchscreen devices, particularly with Apple touchscreen devices, are very, very interested in finding stuff to read and to consume on those devices. And it's not just downloads as well. Revenue also, you know, also affected by Newsstand. This is the same graph as before, only we're showing revenue here rather than absolute downloads. So you can see before the launch of Newsstand, we're doing reasonably well. You know, it's a commercial business, money is coming through, people are buying stuff, and then Newsstand launches and you just have this massive explosion of demand from people. And, you know, with some of our titles, we really struggled perhaps to get our heads around things that we perhaps hadn't thought of as really major things, were all of a sudden generating significant amounts of revenue through this. So, publishing saved, we can all go home. Kind of, but not really. So one of the things Newsstand, hopefully I've got across to you that it's a tremendous opportunity. It is also a big challenge. So I'm putting a fairly positive gloss on how we've done. Obviously, those results weren't achieved easily or simply or without kind of late nights and a lot of screaming at each other. So one of the, you know, this is just a rundown of some of the things that we perhaps hadn't thought of and should have done. So one of them is people want to sample. And if you're putting your titles out there, there's a cost to serving free issues, particularly if you're putting the titles out there in a fairly sort of rich and interactive way. They're very big downloads. You're pushing video, high-quality images to people, and you know you've got this huge number of downloads, but people want to check out a free issue. You're going to be paying the cost for that. So it took us a while to kind of balance, well, what are we going to be paying in outgoings? It's a demanding audience as well. So as well as considering kind of, I suppose the point I'm making is as well as considering the technical implementation, you need to consider the user experience. So it's pretty tough for publishers, for editorial teams, for advertising teams, when you have an app on the App Store and you're getting 1 or 2 star reviews. Apple users, and there's plenty of, you know, in the audience, you know how good they are at just making it work. That's the standard that you are held to. You're held to the standard of people like Google, of people like Facebook, who are much bigger companies with much bigger development budgets, but the audience doesn't care about that. They expect everything to work from the get-go and for it to be simple, and if it doesn't, they will come after you in the reviews, and you will really, really take a lot of criticism, and that can be tricky, and you'll have to manage that. It's also made difficult the sort of the pace that Apple go at. The kind of amount of information they're willing to share with you is fairly limited, so often you're essentially dealing with a moving target, which can be difficult for your development teams, it's difficult for your editorial teams. So yes, this is a selection of not quite the highlights from what happened. It is worth saying, however, that as much as you'll get negative reviews like this, the audience is still willing to keep going. There's not a huge amount of correlation between negative reviews and kind of drop-offs in downloads. It's really just a case of that the audience is, they're very vocal about what their demands are. And in some ways, the benefit is it's very clear to you what your audience wants, which is nice. So you're getting very direct feedback from real people. So it's not statistical, it's, you know, actual quotes from people. And one of the things we've done with user testing is pin some of those quotes up on a board when we're doing the project, and, you know, that's what we've got to bear in mind. Further challenges, so your existing subscribers. One of the great things about Newsstand is there's a brand new audience out there, often international, but you've still got your existing subscribers. They will typically want free access, or they'll want some way of logging in. That's a big technical challenge, particularly given your subscription records and where they're held. VAT, it's a bit of a nightmare, so obviously printed material 0 rated for VAT, digital products are not. If you want to try and sell something that cuts across both of them, be prepared to have to do some very serious and complicated thinking about how that's going to work for you. So this is advertisers are skeptical of page turners. So as much as the audience will be quite happy to read magazines that are essentially replicas of the PDFs that you send to print, your advertisers will be a bit more skeptical. So one of the things that we've done is we've looked quite hard at, for some of our key brands, of doing more interactive editions, spending more on development, and you'll see a corresponding uplift in your advertising. There's your editorial teams to manage as well. I don't know if anyone here is going to be involved in the rolling out one of the many systems that are being plugged at this show to an editorial team. It's a complicated process and it should not be underestimated. At the same time, the editorial team is probably going to be very enthusiastic. If there's one thing that you get from Apple devices, people want to work with them, they want to see their stuff on there, but they're ambitious, and you'll need to work out a way internally to kind of harness that in a kind of constructive manner. So what did we do? So the approach that we took was both quantity and quality. So every single Dennis title, apart from Bazaar, is available on Newsstand in some way, shape or form. And this is a nice shot of them. So I think that's 18 or 19 magazine titles. And getting to that kind of scale is really, really difficult. We don't have huge numbers of developers internally. And even if we did, you wouldn't be able to deploy that quickly without using third parties. So we've used a mix of third-party platforms and augmented with our own development in-house. So I think it's worth saying with third-party platforms, it's a very nascent field. You'll obviously hear about Zinio later on. We're using Pixelmags, we use Zinio as well. We're also using Adobe's digital publishing suite. All of those tools have downsides because A, people are only just figuring out what exactly this is and tablet publishing and how it works, and B, it's not custom created for your organization, and there will be difficulties in terms of how it fits together, what the workflow is. So for The Week, which is our biggest brand, our most important commercially, we built a bespoke system for it because we decided that the trade-offs involved in the kind of the off-the-shelf stuff, we just couldn't really live with that. There are difficulties, with that process as well, but the rewards are also pretty great because you get a totally flexible system. But I think I'm probably not going to be alone in terms of saying that if you've got a wide portfolio of titles, don't necessarily look for a one-size-fits-all solution. You need to kind of think about the title, think about the audience, and then pick and choose. That said, I think your medium-term / long-term goal ought to be to move towards better and more better developed products, things that are more suited to a touchscreen device. The PDF replicas, which we're, maybe about half of our apps are PDF replicas, they do well, and you will start getting revenue and you'll start getting downloads, but every time that we have invested more, we've got a greater return. So this is a comparison between two unnamed apps of ours. So one of them is a page turner, PDFs of a magazine, 47,000 downloads, that's not bad, 16 grand of revenue. Again, that's reasonable. It's not huge, but it's going to make a difference. This is a relatively small title. But no extra money for ads. So all we're doing is sending the PDFs off to the App Store, and there they go. With the iPad app, this is one that we've enhanced with video, touch gestures, so sort of hotspots, 360s, that kind of stuff. A similar number of downloads over the same period. The revenue picture couldn't really be much more different. Much higher, and we also got extra money for advertising as well in that, because you could go to advertisers and say, this is a genuine iPad product. People are going to be really excited to see this. It is interactive, it's designed for the device. It's the same quality content that you get in the magazine, but we're not just shoehorning it. We've actually looked at what users want, and we've enhanced it with the things that they're really going to find exciting. So I guess next steps, both for us and maybe for you guys if you're looking at kind of tablet publishing. There's really no excuse to if you're not doing this. I mean, Apple are not going to sell less iPhones. They aren't going to sell fewer. God, my grammar's terrible, isn't it? They're not going to sell fewer of these devices. So, and from other publishers, that there's an interest in the audience. You really ought to be doing this. It's a difficult user group to deal with in many ways. They really, really like convenience. That's what Newsstand brings them. So, at every sort of junction in your development process, think about how we can make this more convenient for users. It will reward you with higher conversion rates, more revenue, more satisfied users. And for the time being, I think you can get by with the page turners. I think, particularly if you're clear about how you communicate that to the audience. So, if you're just doing page turners, perhaps don't go to the audience and say, hey, we're now on the iPad with, the bells and the whistles. If you go to them and say, you can now read publication X on your device, I think that tends to work quite well, and we've had some success with that. Some of our motoring titles are available as both interactive editions and as page turners, and we've done fairly well in terms of how we communicate that to people. Ultimately, I think where we've been rewarded most, and that's with our DPS publications and with The Week in particular, a focus on a better product will be more rewarding. The Week was, it's a pretty cutting-edge system. It uses a lot of HTML5. In terms of its reviews, it's competing against people like The Economist, people like Time. Those are very, very big brands with big investment budgets, and I really think what we've done surpasses them. If you look at our user reviews, 66% of The Week is 5-star reviews, compared to about 30% for The Economist, about 20% for Time. We've landed really big partnerships with people like Rolex, Jaguar, American Express, and you just literally get inundated with praise, because we really looked at what the users of The Week want, and we built them, something that sort of fits their needs. It's very risky, we put kind of close to a year's worth of effort into that project, a lot of upfront investment, but we really think that looking at the user experience, that's where the greatest rewards are. So this is, we saw some of the reviews earlier for the page turners. This is for The Week. So yeah, I mean, this is when we just launched it, but most of those reviews are 5 stars. And it's not just the users who reward you. So I talked earlier about Newsstand being a retail environment. Apple rewarded us with very, very generous promotions. So one of the differences with the App Store compared to, say, traditional newsstand, physical retail like Smith's, you can't pay for placement in the App Store. It doesn't work like that. You can't buy any of those promotional spots. So when you hit the newsstand button on your iPad and you see, us, Dazed and Confused, Futures Publications, whatever, being promoted there, you can't buy those slots. They are given to you by Apple because you've invested and brought something to their platform. And you don't need me to tell you how much attention Apple's capable of driving. So in a way, Newsstand changed everything. In a way, perhaps it doesn't change it that much. It's great for users, it's great for publishers. It is also great for Apple. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're taking the 30%. They are driving downloads. People buy devices because, I can get The Week on it. I can get, this title on it. But I do think the success of Newsstand is a reminder that the focus for publishing products should be on both convenience and usefulness. So Newsstand, it really does work for users because it automates an awful lot of the processes. If you subscribe to something like The Week or Evo on Newsstand, those copies are delivered to you automatically. You've got the latest cover for the icon. It's just really, really slick. And I think as publishers, you ought to look at what Apple has done and the values that they bring to that audience. And if you're in sync with those values, then that's when you will do best. So I'm just going to hammer this home, but think about who the users are. It's very easy as a publisher to go, well, we need this for Project X. Publication X must be on the iPad and it's got to have all the bells and whistles. Think about whether that's appropriate. As publishers, your biggest advantage is that you have a group of users who you can talk to. Send them surveys, get them in for focus groups, look at your metrics from your websites, think about what that audience actually wants, and that's what will guide you. So thanks very much.
That's the first time I've used a PC in about maybe 15 years. I think I did really well. Not bad. A lot of this presentation, I'll probably say, just like what Alex said. And the thing that you should take away from that is that you've got 2 traditional magazine publishers both agreeing, having worked separately, and coming back with the same kind of pressure points. And a lot of it is familiar. It's subscription, it's charging, it's distribution models, it's the challenges of advertising. So that's the one of 2 things that I think you should take away from this, that we're agreeing that there is an opportunity there. We've tried to figure it out, and it's a lot of the same things that we've come up to. So as magazine publishers, you can do this. You don't have to be a massively techie company, even though we are. So, my name's Mike Goldsmith. I'm editor-in-chief of our iPad and tablet editions. And to be very reductive and summarise Alex's presentation, Newsstand is a good thing for magazine publishers. It's only a category on iTunes. That's all it is, really. But previously, if we have a video games title, like our official PlayStation title, it sat next to Angry Birds. That was the category it could go into. Couldn't go anywhere else. This is the category magazines. Fantastic. And so we do two types. We do interactive editions. So we've got T3, which is the UK's #1 iPad magazine, sells about 14,000 copies every month. Guitarist Deluxe, which is done on Adobe Digital Publishing Suite. And if you look over there, you'll see its picture on that big swinging banner that hopefully won't fall down. And Tap, which is done on our own in-house software. We also do digital replicas, straight page-turning replicas with some limited interaction. We did 65 titles for day one of Apple Newsstand. So that was all of our titles in the US and the UK, and subsequently we've launched titles, other US titles, and even an Australian version of T3 as a flat page replica. So, which one's best? Which is the thing we normally get asked. That's why I should have the picture of Harry Hill, but I don't. So fight. Digital replicas first. Examples, you've all seen them. We have Total Film on there ourselves. Men's Health, which I think is done through Pixel Mags. Cosmopolitan, I think is Zinio, I think. Going to raise my eyebrows? Yes, that's good. And the feature set, you all know it. It's very familiar. Page turning, some hyperlink, some search, text view, depending on which platform you use. You can share. There's a really nice functionality in Pixel Mags that enables you to do that. They all require a third-party platform. As I say, there's the list on screen, unless you do it yourself. And at Future, we decided that for Newsstand, we'd had a long and profitable relationship with Zinio. We'd seen the rise in revenues from Zinio purely from the existence of the iPad. That's why we did it. We saw a massive spike, and so we thought that we were going to have a go at this ourselves. So, plus points. Tablets means they make sense. I said this at the News Rewired conference. This is a rectangle. It makes pictures and words look really good. That's about as complicated as it gets. It means the whole page turning thing. People are going to swipe. It passes the mum test, is what someone said to me. It was a good way of saying it. It's also a multi-platform opportunity. You don't just have to go onto the iPad. You can go onto the iPhone, which is something that you should definitely think about, because Newsstand's available there. You can also go onto desktop, and you can go onto Android and other systems. There's also something that we did. I mean, I headed up a team, and they're the people who are really responsible for this, that we were able to automate and centralize that. We've got all 65 titles up there from a virtual team, and anyone who's been on one of those knows what that means, of about 6 people. So it was a virtual team against virtual revenues. We ended up making $1 million in the first month. So it's now actual revenues, and we're putting together an actual team. So you can centralize it. You need a really good project manager, and I recommend that the Prince 2 should be the backbone of that, but it will get them on there. But it means that scale is now achievable. If you've got a lot of titles where you don't necessarily think you've got the next Wired or you've got the next T3, you can now put all of your editions on there. If you've ever worked with Zinio or someone similar, or quite frankly, if you printed these things every single month, you're going to be able to figure that out. It's also a flag in the ground. You might think that a title like Pro Cycling up there, gorgeous title, does very well in America. Do we want to do a big full whistles and bells version? Yes, maybe. Would that be quite expensive? Yes, definitely. Requires extra staff, and you're thinking about price point and all of those things. So why don't we just do a flat page replica at the beginning and then go and ask people what they want, thinking about the user? So that's exactly what we've done. And there's also the fact that it doesn't just have to be a replica. What you can do is start to scale up slightly and add interactivity. Sometimes it's audio and video, sometimes it's hyperlinks, sometimes it's just improved navigation, absolutely crucial. But it enables you to get on there and claim that place. But they're not seen as the sexiest things. They're seen as a bit of a poor relation. It's just a PDF. Well, I can tell you it's not just a PDF. They're not completely automated. You need a lot of process, whether that's submitting to iTunes or whether that is just enhancing the PDFs and making sure that they're not glitchy as they've gone from the print version through to the digital version. So there is still process required. This is not just free money. There's also still a cost involved in the download, and that's with every system that you use, whether it's in-house with us or whether it's Zinio or whoever. You will be charged for the price of the stamp to send it to your customer. That's fine. If it's a big file and they delete it and they try to re-download it, you've got to pay for that stamp again. So if you do go on and you're using digital editions of any type, make sure you do the maths on how many you expect to sell. Again, as Alex said, you're not able to upsell advertising solutions out of the box with a lot of the platforms that you can use. You are locked into the advertising that comes with the print edition, the original version. And also, as we say, you do get a lot of "your app sucks." It's like getting the worst YouTube comments you've ever seen and putting them into a nice shiny environment like iTunes. You do have to manage the reader expectations. If they come there expecting, let's take one of our titles, The Knitter. If they expect The Knitter to have exactly the same whiz-bang functionality as Guitarist or T3, they're going to be disappointed because it just doesn't work for that market. Some other form of enhancement might, but people will leave a comment on your page telling you what they think. So be careful what you wish for. So some conclusions. Those are some nice banners that we had on iTunes. It's a good first step, and it's a smart first step. You can deliver scale. It's perfect for smaller brands and smaller companies. You can do it. You can do it tomorrow. It's very, very quick. Wide reach. We publish globally. I think there's only a couple of territories that we're not in. So you can go and test other markets. Previously, doing this with hard copies, very, very tough and very expensive and very risky. But it's not potentially the long-term solution for your biggest brands. If you have a big brand like Guitarist, like T3, where you do have some of that multi-channel content, you might want to think about upscaling to something a bit more interactive. Which leads me on to that. So examples, you've all seen them. T3, Wired, Project, GQ. GQ, very nice example of Adobe, as is Guitarist. And again, you probably know the feature set as well. So galleries, audio and video, live content. You're able to, it's also quite developer friendly, and that you can add a lot of JavaScript to it, a lot of CSS on there. Perfect for some of the more kind of whizzier ad solutions that people will increasingly buy from you. And again, there are third-party platforms out there, and I'm sure lots of people here waiting to have a conversation with you and sell you those, and that's whether that's Adobe or Woodwing or Bonnier for quite high-end editions, or something between a digital replica and an interactive edition. So they're lovely. They're perfect for this. This is good. It's still early adopter. It's expensive. It feels good. Everything's got a reflection. Everything's got a drop shadow. If you do something like a full-on interactive edition, it feels lovely, just the lag when you're pushing photos around. It feels great. It feels you can actually justify why you bought one of these things in the first place. Also, interactive editions, you can use one platform and go multi-device. With T3, we've just launched T3 using Woodwing onto Android. You can also, if you look at Kindle and also the Barnes & Noble Nook, you'll see examples of Adobe Digital Publishing Suite on there as well. Performs well for conversion. You know, again, something that in the previous presentation talked about, that if you do something that is a bit more, to use a technical phrase, money on something like this, more people are going to be interested. So again, digital editions, they can deliver some of that, but for the full whistles and bells, you probably are going to be looking at a full-on interactive edition. And as we say, clients love it. You can do nice, sexy stuff for T3. We've done the first video wrapper. So think about a kind of wraparound cover that you get on Shortlist or Metro. We've got a video version of that we've done for one of our clients. You can do some really cool stuff. So, and also, if you do have a brand, if you're sat somewhere where they do have a lot of multi-channel content, maybe they're commissioning for the web as well. We've got a lot of video opportunities, a lot of audio. You can bring that into an interactive edition quite naturally without having to go out and buy all that extra IP. And then if you do something that's a bit more sexy, a bit more interactive, you will get Apple's promotion because you're bringing something, you know, kind of like hopefully best in field to their device. Inevitably, there are minus points. Just because it's got video and audio and HTML5 all over it and it's wonderful and you've spent so long doing it, doesn't necessarily command a higher price point. Don't think that that means, oh, I can charge over a $5 for this. No. Most interactive editions are either $2.99 or $3.99, and that's exactly the same as their digital replica equivalents. So be careful. Where are those extra revenues coming from? Is it from advertising? Is it you just expect to sell more? Again, the maths that you're going to have to do for a digital replica, do them here as well. So that business model is still to settle. But also reader expectations, which I hinted about earlier on. If you do what we tend to call an HD edition, your readers are going to start to expect HD content. So if you've got a great website, again, I'll use T3, fantastic. It's got loads of rich audio and video and 360-degree spin rounds of expensive gadgets. That can go into the interactive edition. Similarly, Guitarist has always had a cover mount showing tuition of how to play certain riffs, lots of guitar tab and the like, we're able to use that content for the interactive edition. If you've got something where that isn't necessarily in your content pot, you want to price that up. And again, remember the IP there as well. You need to buy it for the interactive edition as well. So don't think that just because you bought something for print, it means that you're going to be able to put it on this. Not necessarily. There are advertising challenges as well. We've got some great ad solutions in all of our, kind of full-on interactive editions, but they have been designed in-house. There aren't that many agencies in Holborn or Soho or wherever sitting there going, I'll supply you the page that spins round and turns on its head, and if you shake it, it does this. There aren't those people waiting there, so you will probably have to do that. Now that is an opportunity, a little bit of markup there, very nice. However, it's a day where you're not necessarily designing a page of the magazine. So you will have to consider staffing if you're going to be looking for ad dollars here. And like I say, additional time and cost, it's IP, it's staff, and also it's figuring stuff out. The navigation for these things hasn't really been solved yet. And you're going to have to deal with things like UX. You can bring guys maybe over from the world of online. How do people want to read this? There's no manual. Such a cliche, and I say it all the time. We're writing it. The good thing is that you're seeing people on panels like this who are in agreement, but the ways that we're trying to write that manual are slightly different. So, interactive editions, they're very sexy, of course they are. They're very expensive to make, of course they are, and also you will need additional staff to make them. And they probably are the future. They're probably where the future lies for that big, that big multi-channel brand. But if you think you can take the iPad version and just whack it straight onto Android, that doesn't work. You need to relay it out. You can be smart, but you will need to relay it out. So it's not necessarily the golden ticket, but you can see a future when that install base goes up, that it will be. So, in my crushingly liberal third way, which one's best, I'm going to say both. And that's because we do both. I don't want to get shouted at when I go home, but it really is. If you do digital replicas, you can do them now. You can learn, you can discover, you can start talking to your readers. And if you don't want to talk to your readers, they're sure enough going to talk to you because they're going to email you, they're going to leave comments on your App Store page, and they're going to tell you what they really want. Fantastic. That's free, free to reader research. Then maybe you want to look at interactive editions. You can carry that on and start to do stuff bespoke for these devices, and you're going to start looking at what kind of people you want to employ. Lots of challenges, lots of expense, lots of things to figure out. But what we found at Future, 80% of our readers are new. 90% of those readers are outside the UK. Anyone comes up to you talking about cannibalization, which we've just had probably about 18 months of that, it's not. These are new readers out there. And if you want to get them, this is one route to them. Thanks very much.
So, my name's Carol Jordison. I head up Zinio's efforts in the UK. And I'm going to go through these points as they come up. When I was given the discussion topic for today, I had to sort of have a bit of a think about it because the alternatives offered to the Apple newsstand are Android or an HTML5 option. Zinio sits in amongst that, as you've probably gathered from the other speakers' comments today. And we're not just a page turner. We do interactive as well, and we can talk about that if you wish. But I think we bring a simple solution to publishers who are looking to get their titles digitally. We work with most of the big publishers in the UK, and we have most of the big titles. We're a third option, and I want to talk about the third way. I have tried not to make this too salesy, but it's always quite difficult when you're a salesperson. Zinio we're platform agnostic, and that has always been our strategy. So we work on Windows, Mac, and as the iPad came along, iOS versions, iPad, iPhone, Android, various other devices, HP, whatever that was now, we developed for that. It's no longer around. But there are a lot of advantages to our option in that we're not, we offer the opportunity for a publisher to look at the market from a 360 perspective. And yes, it might evolve. Going back to the discussion panel, we may end up in a situation where Android takes over, but it's not at the moment. We're all gaining revenues from iTunes, and we're in a position to sort of move and evolve with the market as devices evolve. Zinio, you may not be familiar with it, so this is a little bit about us. I don't intend to go on talking about Zinio too much, but we have been around for a long time, so we have legacy, a global presence, and this makes us, and a lot of volume as well, and scale in magazines around the world. This makes us quite attractive to consumers and OEM partners, so I'll talk a bit about that going forward. As I've said already, we don't fear Apple Newsstand. It's another way of presenting magazines, and I certainly think we're not in the position. We work with our publishers. Our publishers are our partners. We are one route to market for them, and we come to it from an all-encompassing perspective. But we are making money from iTunes. We're integrated into iTunes. As Mike mentioned earlier, we've seen the benefits of that lovely rectangle, that shiny rectangle that we all like to view our magazines on now. We've seen the revenue benefits of that. We're often the #1 grossing app in iTunes overall, and in many countries frequently. This was a stat done in December. In the UK, we're usually about number 10. The UK market isn't our key market. I don't think I'm giving away any great secrets from the publishers we work with already, that the revenue we bring is, as Mike also says, from overseas. And that's as much to do with, I think, with print distribution and how difficult it is to get magazines in other countries than it is to do with any technological aspect. So the advantages of a digital cross-platform solution, which is what we are, although it doesn't run off the tongue very easily. More use occasions, more engagement. Now, I've tried to focus on some points, some key points, which if you're a print magazine publisher at the moment and you're looking to digital for the first time, these are the sorts of things that digital is going to bring to you, and these are areas that are only going to grow and over time. And we're thinking a lot about this for the future in the way that we are designing our architecture as a company. So what does the first point mean? More use occasions, more. At the moment in print, you get a magazine, it comes to the door, you flick through it maybe the first couple of days that you've got it, and then it sits on the coffee table and it's not looked at again for a month until the next issue comes along. And I'm as guilty of this as anybody else with yes, I still get print magazines too, the print magazines that I get. Being on a digital device means that you're more likely to get into that snack reading opportunity, more like tube, train, wherever you are, travelling, sitting around in a conference waiting for the next session starting, flick through magazines, whatever. There's also far more opportunity for sharing, whether that be socially, whether that be you as publishers sharing your content and from sampling point of view. And then just people searching, natural web searching for articles. This is we're just seeing the little bit tip of this. As our tools get more developed and as we aggregate our content more, the opportunities are vast, and I'll go into some specific examples in a minute. So as I've already touched on, data is the next big thing. Now, I hate this slide. There are many, many data points, but this is a very popular slide in Zinio at the moment, because this is how we're thinking about designing our architecture of our organisation going forward. These are the data points that we've identified as BI that we have to collect and start to extrapolate and collect and build architecture for going forward, because one of our principles is to share this with publishers, obviously to build it for ourselves, but also to work with publishers and give you this. So, if I focus on a couple of things, we've talked about advertising. Yeah, advertising digitally. Well, you can measure it in different ways. You can say how much of a magazine was read, how many pages were read, how was it looked on, how long did they spend on a page of advertising, did they click on any of the hyperlinks. And that's just one little thing that we can look at. So that's just one point, and I'm being asked at the back to move on, which is fair enough. Data's a bit boring, so I'll move on. Also, social behaviour and single sign-on. We've integrated single sign-on into our app. We're also talking at the moment about Pinterest, which has suddenly become popular in the world of digital and works really well for magazine content. because it's capturing pictures, and you can see the real advantage of social sharing around Pinterest for certain magazines going forward, interiors, wedding dresses, that kind of thing. How it works, for instance, I'm reading an article about Drew Barrymore. I want to share that article with a mate of mine, so I can share it through Facebook, easy peasy, single sign-on. And one of the other things that I haven't mentioned about single sign-on, we will get far more data points than we do at the moment from our normal login and purchase process. We also overcome some of the data issues that we don't currently receive from iTunes purchases. So there are many more advantages to publishers than just the advantage of sharing. So Drew Barrymore, I can clip that picture. I can save that picture to my clippings, or I can share it again. I can post it on Pinterest, for instance, or I can save it in my bookmarks. Now, obviously, why I'd be wanting to save articles about Drew Barrymore, I'm not too sure, but you can see the benefits of this around other content areas like cars, boats, cameras. I mentioned wedding dresses again. I'm sounding obsessed. Maybe it's the 29th of February. It's just hit me. I don't know. Sampling and upselling opportunities. Publishers at the moment give away print, give away issues. You don't have to do that. You can just sample and share via social media methods, or we can also, because we aggregate all this content, we ask our customers to tell us what categories they're interested in. And as we're one global newsstand, we can then sample articles on your behalf. So say somebody tells us they're interested in cooking, we can then present them with articles from magazines they don't currently subscribe to within the featured element of their app. And then, obviously, give them the opportunity for a little bit of impulse buying. So, and there's also opportunities for more targeted advertising as well. But not only a little bit of impulse buying around categories, we're now in the situation where we can support e-commerce. We deal with the currency, the VAT issues, all that's done for you. But also, now I struggle with this word, sectionalization. We're in a situation now where I want to look for a magazine about I want to look for Entertainment Weekly, but it will bring me up in that search, because it's aggregated, every other title with entertainment. Now, if I'm in the US, I may never have heard of one of your magazines before, but suddenly you're being put in that pot with all those other magazines with a similar title to your own, a similar category, a similar interest. We allow the ability, which Newsstand isn't able to do, to aggregate all that content and allow people to look for it in different ways. We also are able to give you packaged merchandising tools which support different currencies, VAT issues, etc. So we can do that in a really simple manner from the back of your site. As I mentioned before, we are quite interactive, giving our global proposition to OEMs. OEMs want it simple. They've got key markets around the globe, and they want one solution that they can work with. So at the moment, we're working with all of these partners, mainly preloaded apps and readers within their devices on the whole tablet, but not necessarily. So I've touched on all of the benefits of a digital global newsstand for you, and the ones that are highlighted in red and white are the ones that no other solution is able to give you at the moment. But that's my one sales point, my one Zenio sales point. Ultimately, what digital will give you, and then I would suggest an aggregated solution will give you, is additional ad revenue. Revenue, not ad revenue. And that is complementary to anything you may be doing in Apple Newsstand as well. It's not an either or. I do not believe that, and I think anybody would be crazy to suggest that. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your discussions on the panel.
Right, thank you very much for that. We're right at the end of our time, but quick burning question. Anybody have a quick burning question for any of our panellists? No? You're all satisfied? Two hands here. Maybe the gentleman at the back.
My question is probably to publishers who are specializing in rich content apps. Would you say that the revenues that you generate initially offset the cost of hiring the teams with the specializations and whatnot? And if not, when do you see that happening?
You go first.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, as Mike said in his presentation, you do need to run the numbers and you need to consider it from every angle. But I mean, so take, for instance, Evo, which is a car magazine that we do. It's one of our first iPad products. They're already producing video for their website, so we figured, well, we've already got a good kind of cost model for producing that content in a way that works for us as a business, and so it wasn't too much of a leap. Where it's harder is where a brand has kind of almost no digital infrastructure and you've got to kind of create the whole lot of it. So it's definitely something that you should think about, but I wouldn't consider it, you know, inhibitive across the whole company. It's a factor, and maybe for one of the smaller, you know, for a smaller brand, it might be something that kind of that stops you in your tracks. But it's generally something that you would do as part of the review of what the users want and what your editorial team can kind of come up with.
I think the one thing I'd add is that, you know, again, much as Alex is saying, if you've got that infrastructure there, if you've got maybe your staff are a little bit techie or they produce that kind of content for a website, then fine, it seems like the right thing to do. If you're starting from scratch, I really would, you know, kind of run those numbers again and again. But the one thing is that, say, it's not like there are going to be less iPads. It's not like Kindle aren't going to push Apple. It's like there is opportunity out there. I think it's worth looking at, even if you decide not to right now. And that's exactly what I was saying. Don't stop doing it right now, but the future might be more of an interactive thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and publishers ought to be thinking more as a tech company would in terms of having a roadmap. So, you know, planning, this is what we're doing now, this is what we're going to be doing, you know, Q3, Q4, this is when we're going to do it. Because it might be that at the moment it's not going to make sense solely with revenues from users, but come Christmas there's a good uplift in terms of advertising, and that's what's going to make it make sense for you. So you ought to really have a sense for all your products, where you are now and where you want to be in kind of 12 months' time. And obviously that'll change. But
when we were doing these conferences, you know, a year or so ago, a newsstand didn't exist. It would have been no, would have been the reply. And then all of a sudden, subscriptions were enabled about a year ago. And like I say, it's about 140 days since the launch of Newsstand. All of a sudden, it does make sense. What else is going to come along? You know.
Right, thank you very much indeed. We're absolutely out of time. There is another discussion going on in the next session further down here on interactive apps, if you want to catch that. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much to all our panellists.